From the Digital Media Center on the campus of Southern Oregon University in Ashland, Oregon. This is Ramping Up Your English, an educational program for intermediate level English language learners. Here's your host for Ramping Up Your English, John Letts.
Welcome to Ramping Up Your English. Ramping Up Your English is for English language learners from all language backgrounds who have already begun the process of learning English as their second language. It's a program for people of all ages. If you're seeking greater English proficiency, this program is designed to help you reach that goal. Ramping Up Your English is a support program for English learners who have already passed the beginning stages of learning English. We take a content-based approach to helping you reach higher English proficiency. We use English to teach English. The theme of our first unit is Trains and Railroads. This is episode 29, segment 1. In our last episode, we arrived in Los Angeles aboard the Southwest Chief, a passenger train Amtrak rescued from the Santa Fe Railroad. The Southwest Chief gave us a great look at the American West, bringing us through the Rocky Mountains at Raton Pass and passing through the iconic Southwest cities of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Flagstaff, Arizona, all the way to Los Angeles. Today we travel in a place that's even wilder. We head north to Alaska. Hop aboard now for the first part of Alaska Rails.
It doesn't rush in here, does it? You guys come home yet? How are you?
The train, boss, the train.
Oh, yeah. We had the perfect day on the mountain. Perfect day.
This is huge. My gosh, it just keeps coming.
Spirits were high. It's true that we were leaving Alaska's second largest national park, but we were also beginning a train ride that would take us through some of the wildest country in North America. It would take us in style. People swarmed around the train, waiting for their turn to board. It seems that everyone spoke in a way that was excited, almost manic. We found ourselves passing the time by comparing tilly hats with other travelers.
Oh, I got him.
And then I put them on something. I got one of these like a...
There was no Cruise West car, but we shared a car with the Princess Cruise folks. And the Cruise West people were there to help make sure we got on. Our Cruise West people came aboard to see to our comfort. We'd have plenty of that, and a great view.
Yes, as you all know, my name is Eddie. I will be your bartender.
We hardly felt ourselves start, but we were moving, easing away from the train station. We were soon looking back at Denali National Park, while the folks in the park were looking at the train.
Coming downstairs to join us for lunch.
River coming up.
We were looking back over the expansive taiga forest, crossing the river that Liz and I had rafted just the day before, and the many hills and mountains around this area. The scenery seemed to only get better the further we pulled out from the train station.
Kettle Hole.
This is a kettle hole, one of many we'd see along the route. These little pockets of water fill holes scooped out by retreating glaciers. Our train had to circle around them, but we were in no hurry. Our train was right where we wanted to be. We crossed the same river, though not the same section, where Liz and I went rafting the day before. We saw a lot of this river while we visited with a landowner from Vermilion Parish in Louisiana. Water and rice farming just seemed to go together, even in talk in the wilds of Alaska.
Is that what he's trying to
But talk got old, so I went below to the vestibule, where there was nothing between me and the fresh Alaskan air. Here I could hear the rumble of the wheels on the rails and the squeaking of the car couplings. The greens were greener as the scenery rumbled by. Looking back, I was reminded that we were near the end of the train. This water is backed up behind a beaver dam, which you can see right here. We passed through some of Alaska's wetlands, provided by the activity of nature's great engineers, beavers. Metal scraping metal doesn't always make a pleasant sound. It happens most when the train goes around a tight curve. It's the sound of the wheels on the tracks. It could sound like somebody scraping their fingernails on the chalkboard. I moved from the open air back up to the coach, where Liz and Charlie were visiting with other passengers. There was no lack of view up here. Rivers turned to lakes, hemmed in by ever-present mountains, scraping the bottoms of these clouds. For a time, we were away from roads or towns. We had wild Alaska to ourselves.
Highest point on the Alaskan Railroad. You're going to see a coal mine coming up and a copper mine.
Inside the point.
That's awesome.
The train slowed and revealed this crew. maintaining the tracks. Meanwhile, the passengers in our car kept getting louder and louder as there were more and more drinks served. Here, we met the Alaskan Railroad passenger train headed east. We passed it slowly, checking out the passengers through the dome car windows. It's always a moment when you meet the train going the other way, a bit like looking at yourself. Here, we inch past this maintenance train. Soon, we were back on the rails, crossing Alaska.
Welcome back to Ramping Up Your English. There's more to this Alaskan Rail adventure later in this episode. This is segment 2 of episode 29. If you're assigned to do a state report, Alaska would be a good choice. When I was in school, doing a state report meant writing to the state tourism office and using an encyclopedia. Well, those were both great experiences, but today you're more likely to find the needed information on the internet. You can visit the state's tourism office on the web and find information on Wikipedia. Either way, there are some basics you'll need to include in your report. All 50 states have their state flag, motto, flower, tree, etc. As an intermediate English learner, getting that information should be easy enough. But how do you present it? Well, that's what I'm going to show you. It has a state flower called forget-me-not. You can write this two ways. You could say the state flower of Alaska is the forget-me-not, or you can write Alaska's state flower is the forget-me-not. Either way is correct, and you'll want to alternate these as you list all the state things. You could say that the coastline of Alaska is, and I forgot how many miles, but it's a lot. Or you could write that Alaska's coastline is, and then fill in that number for the number of miles long. You'll find that in your research. Now, notice that the last example has what looks like a comma hanging in the air. This is an apostrophe. We used apostrophes in earlier episodes to make contractions out of two or more words. That's not why we're using it now. In this case, the apostrophe shows possession. This coastline belongs to Alaska, so we say it's Alaska's coastline. The possessive apostrophe is always followed by the letter S or by nothing at all. Let me give you an example of that one. Here's an example of an apostrophe after an S. In Alaska, the marine mammal's food supply is abundant. Since the word mammals is plural, ending in an S, the apostrophe comes after the S. Now, it's more common to see it used with the singular noun, written before the possessive S. A humpback whale's nourishment needs are abundantly met here. So you want to remember that rule, and you'll want to mix up your use of possessives, having some sentences use them and others not using them. For example, of not using, the nourishment needs of humpback whales are abundantly met here. Now, let's take a look at this. So back to the report, you could say that the flag of Alaska is mostly blue. You could say that. Or you could say that Alaska's flag is mostly blue. Both are correct, but your reader might get tired of hearing or reading Alaska, Alaska, Alaska. Well, you can vary your wording even more by using pronouns. Once you've established that it's Alaska your report is about, you can use the pronoun its. For example, Alaska's flag is mostly blue. Its state flower is the forget-me-not. Now notice that the word its has no apostrophe. The possessive pronoun its is written without an apostrophe. If you see or write the word with an apostrophe, as seen there, it's a contraction for the words it is. Don't use the apostrophe for the possessive pronoun its. So let's look at your facts and see you can use these forms to communicate them to your readers. The state blank of Alaska is, or you could say Alaska state blank is, and you could use its state blank is, the blank being filled in by a fact. Now, you don't want to overdo the simple facts. You'll want to dig deeper than that and share some interesting things about this 49th state to join the United States of America. We'll show you more of this larger state from the rails when we return. There are lots of positive things happening in the world of education in Southern Oregon and Northern California. We spotlight those in a program called Adventures in Education. Adventures in Education looks at positive things happening for our children and for our community in the education world right where we live. Adventures in Education can be seen twice a week, Saturdays at 3:30 p.m. and Thursdays in the evening at 7:30. Join me, please, for Adventures in Education. I'm John Letts. Welcome back to Ramping Up Your English, an educational support program for intermediate level English speakers who want to get better in English. If that's you, you're in the right place. Our first unit is Trains and Railroads. This is segment 3 of episode 29. Today we're crossing the wilds of Alaska aboard a train. Let's see some more of this adventure with this video clip.
Our rapid clackety-clack slowed to a grind around some of these sharp curves. here's another beaver dam backing up the water for a lodge. This is beaver country, and I don't mean Oregon State University. Much of Alaska's landscape is still shaped by these clever builders. We put a lot of trust in human engineers and builders on this trestle. It wasn't logical, but this much relief had me hanging on to this train.
And we are getting ready to go into Indian Valley. Once we get there, we'll pass Indian River.
Beavers made use of these kettle holes as well. Those who raised kits built their lodges in the middle, while bachelor lodges were constructed on the bank. We could see it all from the windows of our dome car. All the Cruise West passengers filled our half of the car, except there was one passenger too many. That was me. I sat on the side with the Princess passengers. I was right on the border between groups. Someone saw salmon in this river, so I was climbing all over the seats, eager to get video if there were any to see. There were no salmon jumping in this clean, cold water, but I did see yet another beaver dam. We saw no salmon, nor did we see any beavers. There were lots of trees, though. This is the Boreal Forest, sometimes called taiga. Roots only go down so far until they encounter permafrost. Our train ride only took us as far as Talkeetna. We sliced through Alaska's green interior, green in the summer anyway. And then we abandoned these train cars, like most of the other passengers. We'd travel the rest of the way to Anchorage in a motor coach, where spirits were still high at the end of a long, wonderful day.
Welcome back to Ramping Up Your English. Doing a state report on a state as huge and varied as Alaska would be a challenge, but imagine how interesting it would be when you're done. Just use some of the sentence structures we've learned. The whatever feature you're talking about of Alaska is, or Alaska's, whatever feature you're talking about, is, or using the possessive pronoun its. Be sure to go beyond these beginning steps to do some description. Write about the land features and the coastline. There's the inside passage, the interior, the Arctic North. There's all the different kinds of people in these regions, as well as world-class wildlife. There's the indigenous population, the Russians and the Americans. There are whales, walruses, and bald eagles. Don't forget about the gold rush. Don't forget about the extreme weather and how people cope with that extreme weather. You'll want to include the vast natural resources and industries, but don't forget the great conservation work that's being done. Great national parks and wildlife refuge have been set aside by President Carter and supported by Presidents Clinton and Obama. There's the threats of monstrous gold mines and their conflicts with the finest salmon habitat on the planet. You'll also want to include the Alaska pipeline and the resulting wealth being shared by the indigenous communities. But you'll also want to include the horrific consequences of the Exxon Valdez oil spill and the natural disasters of earthquakes and tsunamis. If you decide to research Alaska, you'll be writing a very long but very fascinating report. You may not have the privilege of visiting the 49th state, but with the research you do on the internet and the reference books, plus the videos you watch, your biggest headache may be deciding what gets left out. The video clip we showed today could help you understand some of what you've read about the great state. Whatever your research tells you, be sure to write about it in your own words. Now, I know it's likely to be a challenge with limited English, but taking on that challenge will stretch your English proficiency far more than just copying a book or computer screen. And good luck on that challenge. You can watch the video clip we featured on this show or watch the entire episode by visiting my website, letscreate.org. Click on the episode 29 page. You can also view and even download the program and more by visiting archive.org/details/RogueTV. Click on Ramping Up Your English on the right sidebar or choose my name. You can watch this series twice a week on Channel 15 and others on the Ashland Home Network and on Channel 182 on Charter Cable in Southern Oregon. The TV channels in other areas of the country may be different. Check times for your local public access station. I want to thank my volunteer crew, my announcer Bob Ayers, RVTV, and I want to thank you, our viewers. See you next time for Ramping Up Your English. I'm John Letts.
You've been watching Ramping Up Your English, a support program for intermediate level English language learners. Learn more. Visit our website at letscreate.org. You can also watch or download today's program at archive.org/details/RogueTV. Join us next time on RVTV Voices for Ramping Up Your English.